Gold Derby senior editor Daniel Montgomery. Let's talk the acting races at the Oscars. You just in the last 90 seconds made a bold leap in your Best Actress predictions, and you dumped Sally Hawkins, right? For who and why did you do it?
I moved Hawkins down because I thought, I'm just gonna play a hunch for the moment, which is me giving myself an out to change it in another 90 seconds. But at the moment, I'm saying Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird. This would be her third nomination. She was nominated for Best Actress for Brooklyn, Supporting Actress for Atonement. She's only 23 years old, but the Oscars love an ingenue. She fits that Jennifer Lawrence mold, that Emma Stone mold. So I feel like if I think Lady Bird is a potential spoiler for Best Picture because it has such a consensus backing to it, everyone loves it. It's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think, still at this moment. If that translates to the Academy, I think she's got a strong chance of winning Best Actress at the Golden Globes in musical or comedy, where she doesn't have to worry about Frances McDormand or Sally Hawkins, so she'll get her own moment on the stage. I'm going out on that limb for the moment.
I love that prediction because I love the movie so much, like everyone else. My one problem with it is, and maybe it's quibbling, but she doesn't have the big Oscar scene. She doesn't have the big speech, or she doesn't have the kind of Michael Stuhlbarg, poignant little heart-to-heart moment in Call Me by Your Name. They often want that, but on the other hand, she is spot on the whole film, and it is her movie, and she is the reason we love it so much.
Yeah,
I like that prediction.
It's a risk.
It's a risk. I like it. I think that it's not. They like these big grandstanding screaming performances at the Oscars, and I think that Frances McDormand is out front because of the defiance of the, and not that Saoirse doesn't have defiance, and they almost always want defiance, like Brie Larson in the movie. They want to channel that rage we all have as flawed human beings in a cruel world. But and I like that, but I think Frances McDormand is out front because not only is there's got to be some place you put all this love for Three Billboards, which I acknowledge is also the same argument you could use for Lady Bird, because both of those movies have this extraordinary advocacy behind them. But Frances McDormand is just more to the Academy demo, not that that's true so much today as it used to be. The Academy is changing. Now, Meryl Streep, let's talk about this for a second. We can't ever, when Meryl Streep won, it was kind of an upset. It was, Viola Davis was out front in the Gold Derby odds. And thank God I switched over to Meryl, because there's just something majestic and regal about her. And how do you vote against this star? What's your feeling on Meryl?
Meryl is a potential sleeping giant in this race, which is weird because it's Meryl Streep. So when do we ever not assume that she's a top contender? But I remember when Florence Foster Jenkins came out, that came out in August. And so I think a lot of people had sort of not necessarily written her off, but kind of moved on to other contenders by the time the end of the year awards season started up. And then she just kept popping up over and over and over again for Florence Foster Jenkins. And she, of course, got the Oscar nomination for that. And this movie is an even stronger film, at least in terms of its Oscar chances in other categories. And it's
it could win Best Picture too, yeah.
Yeah, it has Steven Spielberg, and Tom Hanks could also be nominated for it. So this is her first movie in a while that feels like it's not the Meryl Streep show. It's Meryl Streep giving a commanding lead performance in a film that has larger Oscar kind of potential to it, which could even help her, because if they love her on her own, they'll love her even more if she's in a film that they also love.
And it's her film. She owns the film. The thing is from her point of view. And what I love about this movie so much, it's just extraordinary, is that they tell it from her point of view rather than Daniel Ellsberg, who was, of course, the engine behind the Pentagon Papers. And it takes on these big issues. My mother died in 2003, and she was very much like Archie Bunker and Edith Bunker, excuse me. Part of a world that didn't appreciate women, and she accepted. I'm talking about my mother here for a moment. If I can have a private aside, she believed that women didn't have a right to have an opinion, and it's shocking to see it up on screen in the Post. where Meryl Streep plays this, tycoon woman who is startled by people wanting her opinion, and she's got to assert herself, and even she doesn't believe she has a right to do so. And boy, is that bold in the movie. And she has about 3 scenes that are really, really poignant. And the takeaway I get from the movie is that, boy, you just are so won over for her, and you're rooting for her, and she's saving America, and she's saving democracy. And it's so pertinent today with Donald Trump, because this movie takes on a conservative White House, and she's been taking on a conservative White House in recent years at the Golden Globes and elsewhere. And it's Meryl Streep. Come on, if anyone's going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 Oscars someday, it's her. And I think this performance is such a spot-on, heart-tugging masterpiece. I think it's one of her finest. I could see her winning again in another upset. I mean, don't write her off here. It's knock your block off.
Yeah, and she certainly has the, at the screening I went to in New York, there were like 2 or 3 applause breaks in the entire film.
Yeah, I know.
To her. She, and you talked about Defiance with Frances McDormand. Frances McDormand gets like 5 or 6, like, fiery, defiant speeches. Meryl Streep isn't as kind of outwardly demonstrative in this performance, but because she starts in as you mentioned, more meek and not really valuing her own opinion as much as as she does later. When she does eventually come out of her shell and assert herself later, that's when the audience applauds. She gets that arc, and so when she gets that moment of asserting herself, the audience is right there with her. Audience is right there with Meryl all the time. So throw in that character arc, and she does have potential.
And it's special. It's not just any performance. This is a key moment of an important person in American history. Let's talk about, who are we not talking about here? Sally Hawkins. When I saw that Shape of Water in Toronto, you thought, oh my God, okay, talk about ticking off the boxes. The mute role. I mean, Marlee Matlin, are you listening? It's all from her point of view. It's her quest. It's a wonderful fantasy, and she really dazzles up there, doesn't she? What's your take on Sally? Oh, you just had her at Best Actress. What was prior to 5 minutes ago, or 10 now that I've been babbling so long here? Why did you have her at number 1, and why would you be tempted to put her back over Frances?
I had her at number 1 because, because at the time I thought of the Best Actress films, Shape of Water felt more like a potential Best Picture winner, and she could ride that wave. I saw the film, and she's absolutely fantastic in it, but it's not a showy role. It's showy in the sense that playing a mute role, the challenge that presents, is itself kind of a showy achievement. But emotionally, it's not a big fireworks kind of performance. I like Saoirse Ronan, true, but she also kind of doesn't have the she's not the young starlet, like Saoirse Ronan. That's one type that they usually like, and she's not the veteran grand dame who like Meryl Streep or Helen Mirren that they usually like. That would be the Frances McDormand type this year. So it sort of, in terms of the kinds of actors they usually go for in this category, she doesn't quite conform, although that might work in her favor, because she feels so new, even though she's certainly not a new actress, and she does have kind of an IOU.
I mentioned it to her at the Toronto Film Festival. This is a funny little story. I was in an elevator with her and Octavia Spencer, just the 3 of us, and their rep, and I didn't even know. I wasn't paying attention who I was in the elevator with. I was in my little old zone, and Octavia Spencer goes, "Gold Derby's in the house." And she turns on me and goes, "Hi, Tom." I'd never met Octavia Spencer, but it's so great to see our fans out there, right? And all of a sudden I turn, oh my God, hello. And Sally was immediately to my right, and Octavia was on the other side of her. The moment going back and forth that Sally ended up missing her stop on the elevator, and Octavia and the rep went off. We had to get her back, but the reason she missed her stop is I had turned to Sally Hawkins and said, "You was robbed, baby. You won the Golden Globe for Happy Go Lucky. You didn't even get an Oscar nomination. What an outrage!" And I think she was so delighted that somebody even knew that kind of awards factoid that we all know, being award nuts here. But I'm not sure the Oscar voters, to get to the point here, I'm not sure the Oscar voters know that she's doing IOU, but they know she's been around and she's been in Oscar caliber films and award caliber films for a long time. But we have this problem. We have three frontrunners who don't campaign. Meryl Streep, Frances McDormand, and Sally Hawkins. None of them campaign. Is there anybody who could pull an Eddie Redmayne and get in front of the frontrunner by just putting on a great ground game?
Well, I don't know how much Saoirse Ronan campaigns, but if someone's gonna put on a charm offensive, and she also fits the ingenue category, and also fits the biopic playing a real person category, it's Margot Robbie playing Tanya Harding and I, Tanya.
And I'm admittedly underestimating her. You've got her in your nominees now, right? Talk me into putting Margot in mine. Go ahead.
She plays a real person. She's that young ingenue, and on top of that, she is at exactly the right point in her career. She has put out, her star is rising in such a way that, she was at first known for, for her beauty, but she also starred in The Wolf of Wall Street, got critical acclaim for that. She was in Goodbye Christopher Robin this year, so she's making prestige movies while she's also making box office movies like Suicide Squad last year, which nobody liked, but I think everyone liked her in it, even though they didn't like the film, which goes to show what a charismatic performer she's turning out to be. And so it just feels like, she's in that kind of spot like Jennifer Lawrence was in, that, just starting to creep up into this superstardom phase with this balance of prestige and mainstream blockbuster box office stuff. So yeah, I think she's ripe for it, and if she hits in the right way,
things would have to break a certain way for her to win. Now, those are the five dames in at the top of our list for Best Actress according to the odds generated by the experts' predictions. In sixth place is somebody who really, really is the darling of not only Hollywood, but of the critics, and somebody everybody wants to give an Oscar to, Jessica Chastain, who's gone in and out of that fifth position in our charts, trading spots with Margot. Margot just leapt ahead of her. I love Molly's Game. It was so well written. I think Aaron Sorkin can do no wrong. What's your take on Jessica Chastain? My problem is, I think she's playing Jessica Chastain.
It's not, it's tricky. This is one film that I haven't seen yet, looking forward to, but it kind of needs to be the right film for her, in the sense of the right vehicle. I think she's got an Oscar in the bag. It's just kind of getting those right circumstances. And she's been playing these chillier characters, these defiant women, but not necessarily the huggable kind, which is, shouldn't necessarily matter, but sometimes we see that it does. The Oscars like these warmer heroines a lot of the times. So we'll see what happens with the film. I think she's got a shot. I think certainly at the Golden Globes, where things are split up, that could give her a boost. I think she's probably going to get a nomination there.
And who's going to get a nomination at the Globes too? And I've heard this from Globe voters, is Judi Dench. She'll get the automatic nomination. They have 10 actress spots, of course, when you spread things out over comedy and drama. Kate Winslet, she really carries Wonder Wheel, and I liked it. I thought it was really good Woody Allen, but no, I'm in the minority there. It's not taking off with the awards conversation, and either is unfortunately Emma Stone, last year's winner with Battle of the Sexes, who really has not only the role of portraying a real life person, but a crusader for human rights and all of that. And I think the problem with Emma Stone with Battle of the Sexes is it just seems too much like a TV movie. I loved it. I really liked it a lot. But I think that missing some kind of pretentious gravitas they may want. That Wonder Wheel has, actually, and Battle of the Sexes does not. And not that that's a bad thing. It knows who it is. Let's leap over to Best Actor now. Does Gary Oldman just have this in the bag, and if so, why?
I think, honestly, the only thing that could stop Gary Oldman is Gary Oldman. Like if he, accidentally, trips on, if he throws a phone at someone, Russell Crowe style, he's out,
or suddenly, walks down the aisle kissing her, Donald Trump or something, right?
Yeah, I think as long as he keeps his head down, he might have this maybe almost in the bag. It feels like there's this kind of consensus forming around him. Everyone seems to love this performance. Everyone agrees that he's overdue. He just got his first nomination a few years ago for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. That itself was overdue. And so it feels like it's one of those it's time moments where when that narrative starts up, it just keeps going. It's the Jeff Bridges for Crazy Heart. It's Julianne Moore in Still Alice. It's these actors who are like, they've put in their years and they hadn't won, and that one role comes and everyone is just like, just give it to them. This is their year.
Until they get surprised by an Adrian Brody type, who all of a sudden storms the stage as a winner. And Adrian Brody is now the youngest Oscar winner of Best Actor, if I got my trivia correct. And he could be supplanted by Timothee Chalamet for Call Me By Your Name. And I was not sure at first that Chalamet would be seriously regarded by award watchers as a Best Actor contender. But in fact, he really is. And he's campaigning. He's very smart. He's on the ground. And he's working it. I think that I agree with everything you said. And I think that Gary Oldman is likely to win. But I think if there's a spoiler here, I think it would come from Timothee. It's the new face. They don't often go for ingenues in the acting, in the actors race like they do for the actress race. Where do you stand on Chalamet?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think his fate will rest with the film as a whole. Like if the film gets big, and I think Best Actor is past Gary Oldman and maybe Daniel Day-Lewis in A Phantom Thread. I think there's a lot of room to maneuver in this category. It's not quite as stacked with like lock contenders like some other categories are. So he could certainly get in if
oh, he'll get in. Don't you think he gets nominated? Yeah, I think those are locks. Oldman, Day-Lewis, and Chalamet. The question is, I agree with you that what takes those bottom two, and it's not the crowded race we have for Best Actors.
Yeah, and the problem with Chalamet is his age in terms of what the Oscars usually go for. Yeah, he's 21. He would be the first Best Actor nominee born in the 1990s. And if you consider how resistant they are to young men in this category, Eddie Redmayne just a couple of years ago was the first winner of Best Actor born in the 1980s. The thing about the Adrian Brody comparison is interesting, and the reason I don't think that necessarily translates to this race is because Adrian Brody was up against a kind of a divided field with two past winners. Like it could have been Jack Nicholson in About Schmidt. It could have been Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York. So there wasn't one solid front runner in that race, and they were both past winners. In this case, you got Gary Oldman, who feels like a more solid front runner, and he's never won before. So the voters have a reason to feel like, okay, we want to get him on stage so we can give him his first Oscar. So I think with that, plus Chalamet's age, and the fact that Chalamet doesn't have as showy a role as no one has as showy a role as Gary Oldman does. It's a subtler performance. I think it'll be tougher for him to win than it'll be for him to be nominated, given the strength of the film as a whole.
As we talked about during the recent Emmys, Derby, I did some research on actors who portrayed Winston Churchill, and every single one in modern history who got nominated won. Most recently, John Lithgow, and Alan, what's his name, Bates won, and so forth. Brendan Gleeson won as Churchill. You just can't miss with that. But on the other hand, there may be a case of been there, done that here. Hey, Tom Hanks, poor Tom Hanks. What does he have to do to get nominated? Here's a former past, longtime, governor of the acting branch, double winner, beloved in town, everybody's favorite, who got skunked for Saving Mr. Banks, skunked when everybody got nominated for Bridge of Spies except him and Spielberg. And I'm missing another one of his
Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips, which he had the big crying scene in even. So I think that he has a good shot of getting in here because it is fluid, those bottom two positions, as we're talking about. And the problem is he's Tom Hanks, as Ben Bradley. But yet, remember, the last person to play Ben Bradley won an Oscar, and I'm talking about Jason Robards and All the President's Men. Where do you stand on Hanks? Is he going to get? He's not going to win, but can he get nominated?
I think he can. I don't have him in my 5 at the moment. I feel like he's been burned so many times. Well, I've got James Franco. I'm actually feeling stronger and stronger about him getting nominated. I actually have
working it out here, boy. You see Franco everywhere.
And then I'm going out on a limb at the moment for Daniel Kaluuya in Get Out. If that film picks up steam,
that's not going to happen. I like the idea, but it's not going to happen.
But even if it's not Kaluuya, I don't know if it's Hanks, just because he's been burned so many times before. Right. Strangely, he's a Hollywood darling, and
I just think familiarity breeds contempt. It's the Annette Bening syndrome. She's now a governor, I think, right now of the acting branch, and these people just can't get in. She was snubbed for 20th Century Woman. When you're part of it, either works for you or against you. At the Emmys, for example, Margot Martindale, who's pouring coffee for everybody at the TV Academy events and passing out the cookies. That helps her when she's because she's a tried and true character actress, and they reward her for that. But when you're Annette Bening or when you're Tom Hanks and you have all these millions and world fame and the rest of it, at the Oscars Academy, and you're really active behind the scenes and you're pouring the coffee and doling the cookies out, then I think it may actually be a case of been there, done that. And speaking of which, poor Denzel Washington, I was stupid enough to predict he would win last year for Fences. He didn't. And now he's up for, Roman Israel, which is a so-so movie, but he delivers on screen. Where do you stand? Does Denzel get nominated or not?
I don't have him in my top 5. I think he's got a shot. Just the general goodwill for him. A lot of people who thought he should have won for Fences last year, might just want to get him back in this race again. Even though the responses to the film are a little bit tepid, it is a transformative performance. He plays a savant. They don't explicitly say that he's on the autism spectrum, but it feels like that might be a part of his characterization. So it is a very transformative role. It's a showy performance. He gets speeches. He gets to be likable and down on his luck and tragic in a certain way and triumphant in other ways. So it is the right kind of. It does feel like that kind of Training Day thing where after losing for the Hurricane, they wanted to give it to him. So. In this case, after following the afterglow of Fences, they might pull him into this race. That's definitely possible.
Let's go back to Franco. You're talking about him. He is everywhere in this town at all the events, and he's really working the room. I think every single Gold Derby editor but me has had their selfie taken with James Franco for their Facebook page, and even a lot of our writers. And that's cool. Franco is due for some notice. He's also got his HBO series. He could be nominated twice at the Globes. Disaster Artist is a movie about the worst movie ever made, and that certainly helped Martin Landau with Ed Wood when he was in a different worst movie ever made movie, and it is a kind of a hip insider kind of thing, a movie about movies, and he's doing the ground game. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I can see him certainly getting in, potentially, depending on his momentum. Maybe he would even pull up into that number 2 spot where he becomes the challenger to Gary Oldman.
He's not going to win for that, no.
It's a transformative role. He's playing a real person. He's been nominated before, so he has the respect. But people are rooting for Franco, I think.
For Franco, yeah, absolutely, of course.
Yeah.
Christian Bale, Hostiles. The movie, actually did okay at the Toronto Film Festival, and but it's kind of slipping a bit, and I'm not sure that he would need a really good boost of some kind to get a nomination. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think mostly attention. I think that the film needs kind of just a big boost in its public profile.
Yeah. Do you know a lot of people, Keith Simonton of IMDb, I did a webcam chat with him the other day, and he was really tub thumping for James McAvoy in Split. And I'll be honest, I'd watched part of it before. I didn't keep watching it. I forget what interrupted me. So the other night I sat down and said, I want to watch the whole thing. And I watched it. It's on, HBO or Showtime or Stars, one of those pay channels. So it's accessible to all the voters. And he plays multiple, personality villain. A split personality villain, which is what Split means. And but there really is a push for him as that little movie that you discover, but I'm not quite sure it's enough to get him in. But boy, I've gotten a couple Split DVDs in the campaign process, and he's in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, this race is ripe for that kind of contender, that kind of Viggo Mortensen and Captain Fantastic, who you think is just kind of maybe
That's
one
a
of
good
10 or
analogy.
15 people down the list who maybe and suddenly is getting in everywhere that you never would have expected at the Globes and SAG and this category this year especially is so wide open. It's absolutely primed for that kind of surprise.
And we could see, by the way, Hugh Jackman get in here. We don't. The reason 20th Century Fox had downplayed the movie, saying, "Oh, it's not an awards contender early on," but now I'm hearing it's quite good. The trailer's fantastic, and it looks like really good Golden Globe stuff. We'll see. Andrew Garfield and Breathe. I had him in and out. I think it's too poor Andrew. I think it's kind of like been there, done that. I think that there's nothing exceptional about them. I like the movie a lot, but you know what I'm saying. And I think that's what Jake Gyllenhaal has going against him too, with Stronger. It's a terrific film. He's a heroic character. Where do you stand on Jake Gyllenhaal?
I think he would be in my like 6th or 7th position right now. I'll have to see how that does, at the first awards like Golden Globes and stuff like that, Critics' Choice. He's another one a little bit like Tom Hanks, certainly not as long a career spanning as Tom Hanks, but since he got in for Brokeback Mountain, he's been on the radar a number of times, and he just
screwed for
hasn't been able to scratch his way back in. Nightcrawler, he came very close. He got everything but the Oscar nomination for Nightcrawler.
Sorry about supporting actress. I think we have a winner here already. I think Laurie Metcalf has really emerged, really pulled ahead here in our odds and the rest of it. The movie Lady Bird begins with her face and ends with her face. She's the mother from hell, but you're rooting for her at times, unlike her chief competitor, at least for now, Allison Janney and I, Tonya, who is the mother from hell, who is just, the Satan personified. Where do you stand on the two mothers from hell?
Actually, it's the two mothers from hell plus the mother from heaven, Holly Hunter, the Big Sick. I think she's one of those in the top three also. But yeah, I think I've got Metcalf. I think that's certainly a race that's open for the momentum to shift in one way or another. But Metcalf feels like, with as much love as Lady Bird is getting, I feel like if anything that pours into Laurie Metcalf, I feel if she reminds me of Patricia Arquette in Boyhood in the sense that that was the Best Picture contender, and it only ended up winning the one Oscar, but it was for Patricia Arquette. And
Laurie Metcalf is an awards magnet. She recently won the Tony for Doll's House Part 2. She's won 3 Emmys. And she redeems herself in the movie in a wonderful way. Just when she stops being such a monster, she wins us over with her motherly love. Octavia Spencer in Shape of Water. She's Octavia Spencer again. We've seen this. I think that she can be nominated. She's now in the 4th position in our racetrack odds. I think she can be there. Holly Hunter, doubling back to her to a moment. My only problem with her is that she takes a while to get into the movie. I mean, she doesn't show up until like halfway through, and I think that hurts her. And I think that she's playing Holly Hunter in the same way that Ray Romano is playing Ray Romano. But on the other hand, they're both so endearing, and you can't help but cheer for them. And she really is the mother from heaven. She does a wonderful flip in the story arc in terms of what she does with her daughter's boyfriend. So, and that makes us root for her. Melissa Leo has been dropping in our odds. She was up there at the 3 or 4 position. Now she's down to 6 for Novitiate. I think the problem there is, speaking of women from hell, her role as a nun from hell. I think that while she has a lot of goodwill and love in the industry and respect, and is a past winner, of course, for The Fighter, I think the movie is not widely seen. I think the rest of it is not so much on the awards radar, so that over Thanksgiving, for example, the Oscar voters were not putting Novitiate in their DVD player first. Do you agree?
I agree. I think on paper, like having, when I saw this movie, it's like on paper, this is an Oscar kind of role. It's showy. She gets to be monstrous, but also at times vulnerable because of her own stakes in what's happening in her convent, and it feels custom written for kind of awards attention. But just the film as a whole doesn't feel like it's gotten off the ground in a way that it, especially when she's really the focus of it. Like it's not like a Whiplash where J.K. Simmons started picking up love, but then as people started seeing the film for him, the film everywhere started getting in because they love the film so much. Novitiate isn't getting that kind of momentum, so I think it's hurting Melissa Leo.
Kristen Scott Thomas is terrific in Darkest Hour as Clem, the wife, and I think that she could be nominated. I think that's something that we underestimate. Leslie Manville. Now that we're not allowed to talk about Phantom Thread, the embargo hasn't lifted, but you and I have both seen it, and she's a revelation. We can say this much: she ends up, stealing this thing. I'm not quite sure. Marcus Dixon, our senior editor, your fellow senior editor at Gold Derby, he and I saw it together, and I think there may be a continuity problem with the movie. We don't quite know that. We're supposed to know that this is Daniel Day-Lewis's sister. Did you know that? Is it said in the movie? Do you remember?
I don't remember if it's said in the movie. I do remember that I didn't know it. Yeah.
Yeah. In the Q&A afterwards, Marcus and I are looking at each other going, because Paul Thomas Anderson was up there and Leslie, they're doing a Q&A, and they were talking about as the character's sister. I think that revelation got accidentally left on the cutting room floor, but she's terrific. And of course, she's a British actress they all love. And so she could pop in there. We have not seen Greatest Showman. We don't know about Michelle Williams. Michelle Pfeiffer, the poor thing, had a lot of buzz early on until Mother tanked, even though I loved it. I thought Mother was great. Let's jump over to supporting actor. Big news at Gold Derby today. While Willem Dafoe was way out front for so long for Best Supporting Actor, Sam Rockwell, in my favorite movie to champion at the Oscars, 3 Billboards, has pulled even. It's now tied for the win. Where do you stand on that?
I've still got Willem Dafoe in the lead. He feels like he's been due for a long time. Not quite he doesn't quite have that air of inevitability that Gary Oldman has, but I think there's a similar kind of sentiment and momentum around him that let's give him an Oscar. He is certainly vulnerable to that momentum shifting because Florida Project, it's not a big showy role. He's very subtle, very understated.
But he doesn't have a big scene. That's what I was surprised by. I think what sparks the extraordinary love for that movie among the people who have it is what's at the core of his character, which is this extraordinary, wonderful decency, where this man is running a hotel where just the worst white trash of the great state of Florida, which has a lot of white trash, is there, and he's just trying to soldier through it all and keep everybody floating. And there's something just inspiring and wonderful about it. I think it carries the whole film, and I think it's 2 things. I think it's what you're talking about, the career. It's time for him. But also, I think people are rooting for him so strongly as a character, and especially as the movie winds down and you see where his story arc is going. I think that really helps him a lot. But and by the way, he has a lead role in a supporting. I'm gonna fix that. He has a lead role in a supporting. That he's the male lead of that movie. What's he doing in supporting? Right? I'm getting a delivery. Sorry, this is life in LA that you're seeing. Okay.
I can trim this out too.
don't trim it out. Well, who cares? Keep it in. But now let's Sam Rockwell. Make your best case for Sam Rockwell while I answer the door.
Well, Sam Rockwell is he's been due in the sense that a lot of people, he's been working a while in the industry. He's well liked as an actor. He hasn't been nominated before now, even though he's given standout performances before. And this is certainly a showy role. He's of course this racist cop who is at first an adversary to Frances McDormand, who's trying to find out, solve the case of her, the murder of her child. I do think Sam Rockwell might have a bit of an empathy problem in terms of how people view his character arc. I don't think this would be an uncontroversial role for him. In the same way, I think Willem Dafoe will have empathy pretty much wrapped up. So Sam Rockwell is showier in a film that I think is a likelier Best Picture candidate, and I think Willem Dafoe is overdue and has the empathy.
Now, this is the FYC world that Daniel and I live in up close. So just so that you know, this is what happens at 6 p.m. in Los Angeles right now. My bell just rang. And what was it? It was a messenger with the DVDs. You know what? I just got 2.
Is it Fox Searchlight? Because I just got 2 from Fox Searchlight today.
No, this is Meyerowitz stories. 2 of them. Why are they sending me 2 in different packages? But this is what goes on all the time, is these hand-delivered so that they're very special. This, of course, is on the TV side. It's hysterical, but this goes on all the time. And multiple copies of everything because they want to make sure you get it, Sam Rockwell, I think he's the great discovery of the movie. We can't talk about the spoilers here. It's one of the many great things about the movie is that it takes two plot turns that you just don't see coming a mile away, and one of them involves his character, the other one involves Woody Harrelson's character, and it's just a life. It's one of the many great things about this film, and I think that after everyone's seen it, we can talk more about his character in depth. But I think that there's something going on. This is a guy who's distinguished himself on Broadway and television and films, and the rest. Sam Rockwell. And he's like that character actor in a way, not so much character actor, but like that just guy in the trenches, like J.D. Simmons, that could be rewarded here. That said, so is Michael Stuhlbarg. And he, I think, is my number 1 right now. I'm tempted to switch over to Rockwell. I'm off the Dafoe bandwagon for now. I did have him out there. I think the movie's Critics Awards coming has what poor Armie Hammer does not have in Call Me by Your Name, which is the scene where he gets a little speech. And those little speeches are how you win an Oscar. It's what Monique had in Precious, don't judge me. And he's got a much different speech here. It's a sympathetic one as the kind of loving papa. And it's a heart-tugging scene, and he has been around a while, and he's a real workaday actor who, let's talk about the 2 Call Me by Your Name stars here, Daniel, and I'll pass off to you. Let me finish with Armie Hammer as the rival. He has a lot more screen time. Of course, he is the target of sexual longing for the young Timothee Chalamet's character, and Armie could certainly be nominated as Stuhlbarg. But I think in terms of who could actually win this, I think Stuhlbarg has a better chance than Armie. Though I'm not counting Armie out. I think he can win. Where do you stand on those 2 stars?
I agree that Stuhlbarg has the better shot at the win. He has the veteran factor. He's been around for a while. He's got that kind of long working character actor appeal, like Stanley Tucci finally got in. He got in for The Lovely Bones, even though no one liked that movie. They still wanted to give Stanley Tucci a nomination. That character actor done good. I like to call that kind of trend. And he has another thing going for him. He's in 3 likely Best Picture nominees this year. He is in this. He is in The Shape of Water, and he's in The Post. He doesn't have a huge role in The Post, but all 3 of those films could get in, and he's making a habit of this. Like even though he hasn't gotten in the last 5 to 10 years, he's been in at least 1 Best Picture nominee, like 2 every 3 years or something like that. A Serious Man. Or nominated for Oscars at least. Trumbo he was in. Which Bryan Cranston got in for. The Academy has seen him in everything, and likely he's worked with every single member in some capacity or other.
And he's very accessible to the press and the campaigns. Among the stars who have come to my apartment in New York for interviews. I mean, this is when somebody shows up, when Juliana Margulies shows up at your door to be interviewed, that these are really, great stars who are not, taking their stardom too seriously. He showed up back in the single man days for a video interview I had set up in my apartment. In case you're wondering who else showed up in my apartment, Viggo Mortensen, Gabby Sidibe, and so forth. But I remember Stuhlbarg arriving one day back when nobody knew who he was, and he was trembling. He was so nervous, but he did it, and he was a good soldier out there doing this. Hey, but speaking of, so Armie Hammer, before we move off of Call Me by Your Name, Armie Hammer, where do you stand?
I think he gets in. I think he might have a bit of the slap the stud problem. He's this object of longing, and he has a complete character, of course, but it's not a transformative performance in the sense that he's not transforming his looks or his mannerisms in any way that usually attracts, and that usually helps with the slap the stud problem. Like Leonardo DiCaprio had to have frozen mucus on his face inside the carcass of a deer before they would finally give him the Oscar. So he might have that bit of a problem, but he does have the industry cred already. Like his breakthrough role was the Social Network, which was a big Oscar contender and nominee and won several categories. And so I think he does have the respect to
He
get
has
that
our respect
nomination.
for Gold Derby, because in 2010 when we relaunched Gold Derby, and I threw a big party for the occasion, two celebrities came, Armie Hammer and Aaron Paul, and they both sat in the front with big bottles of champagne and hung out for the evening and had a wonderful time. Thank you, Armie. I'll always remember that. It was really sporting of you. Hey, Richard Jenkins. I think if things fell right, and now they're not, he's actually fallen, I think, down to our 5th slot. There was a time when he was like in that 2nd spot. Richard Jenkins is a revelation in Shape of Water. Just when I was kind of like, oh God, what's he doing in this movie? He's the gay character who they have to put there because she's a deaf mutant, so they have to have somebody react to her to talk, to explain, that. But in fact, of course, what happens to his character, he becomes so integral to the story, and so in winning in every way, he's terrific, isn't he? He steals the whole movie in a way.
Yeah, I think he definitely has a chance. He's been nominated before for Best Actor for The Visitor, of course. When I saw the film, I was struck by the fact that when voters pick, vote in this category, and if they love The Shape of Water, they might have a choice between him and Michael Shannon, who's playing polar opposite. Like he's, Richard Jenkins is the warm, loving character, and Michael Shannon is this, monstrous villain. But that's a kind of a showy type of role that they often go for. And of course, Michael Shannon has surprised us a couple times before when voters had to choose between him and Aaron Taylor Johnson in Nocturnal Animals. It looked like it was going Aaron Taylor Johnson's way, and then the Oscars said, nope, we're putting Michael Shannon in there. Never underestimate how much the Academy likes him, and especially in a showy role like this, in a film that's a possible Best Picture contender. So I think, between the two of them, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, who ends up with more of the momentum as the season goes.
Ray Romano, the big sick, he's in the running for a nomination, isn't he? Seriously.
Yeah, I've got him in my 5, and it might be wishful thinking. That 5th slot for me is like where
but he has
so
the
much
speech.
can change.
You have to have that speech that we're talking about, Stuhlbarg. He has the speech where he shares the bedroom with the lead character, and he has this big confessional scene at night while they're roommates. And there's so much love for him in this town, and he really has a soft, gooey center in the movie as a character. So I would think he's in the running. And then Mark Rylance, he won last year when we all wrote him off, and here he is with Dunkirk. But I don't think that his role is substantial enough in Dunkirk to get nominated. Do you?
I think it's substantial enough to get nominated in the sense that if the film is on a roll, he could go along for the ride. I think he could be one of those signals. If this movie is going to take off as the Best Picture winner potentially, then he could be one of those signals that, okay, they pulled him in for a Best Supporting Actor nomination. So that could be our front runner. I think what helps him is that if the voters are going to pick anyone from Dunkirk, he's the one who stands out most clearly.
Well, all the others look like the same pretty chiseled boy. I can't tell one from the other. Hey, Jason Mitchell, Mudbound, where do you stand? 6 experts say he's going to be nominated.
Very, very strong possibility. I'm switching. I keep switching in and out that 5th spot. Ray Romano, Jason Mitchell, Rylance, and other people. I had Mitchell in there at one point. I'll probably end up putting him back in at another point. It's certainly the emotional heart of Mudbound in a big way. He has the defiance where he's He's playing this a black soldier who fights in World War II. He's a war hero. He comes back home to the Jim Crow South in Mississippi, and he's treated like a second-class citizen again. And it's such an emotional, sympathetic performance. If it helps voters, I hope they're reminded that he also gave a standout performance in Straight Outta Compton. He played Eazy-E, who was the member of NWA who eventually died of AIDS. So he had that standout performance on his resume that I don't think got as much attention and recognition as it should have, given that the film was on the radar. So now he's in this, and this film's starting to pick up some momentum. So he and Mary J. Blige, I can see them both potentially pulling into supporting nominations for Mudbound.
Poor Woody Harrelson is down in our 9th position now. Shame on us. He could really get in there. His role in, God, it's a shame we can't do spoilers on these chats this early until everybody sees these films. But his character, it turns out to be a huge surprise in the movie from what you think it's going to be, and it's so winning and wonderful, and he carries the message of the movie as well. If anybody delivers what this movie is all about, he does, and changes everything. And Woody is just there's he's Woody. He's from Cheers. He's a survivor on the acting scene, and you're rooting for him. You're just rooting for the guy, right? He could get in. I don't think he could win, but I think
he could. I mean, he could get in alongside Sam Rockwell. I think the challenge, Three Billboards is going to have to take off huge, I think, to get 2 of them in. And if it only gets 1 of them in, I think it's going to be Sam Rockwell. I think
with that part.
He's going to be the clearer choice to pick, which it hurts. Woody Harrelson's role in any other movie would be a strong contender for Best Supporting Actor, but when you're in a movie with another clear standout supporting performance, sometimes it's like they just pick the other one. And
Right. Okay, well, let's wrap it up here. I love all this suspense, don't you?
It's the best part of the Oscar race, when things still feel open and there are lots of possibilities to discuss, lots of great movies to talk about and think about before we start whittling some of them away as they get snubbed at various races.
Yeah, we have to remind, this is where we started with this chat, and let's end here, and that is we're having these conversations, we're making these bold predictions before a single award has been bestowed by Gotham Awards or Indie Spirits or the rest of it. So we are proving our might. Of course, there are many times when we get humbled and we don't see things coming, and even nominations. So there will be surprises when that nomination comes out and the various winners along the way. But I think we've done a pretty good job focusing the races. Thank you, Daniel.